Brakes. They tend to be pretty important when it comes to driving. You see, smashing into things at Mach Jesus is not nearly as fun as it sounds. And well, my brakes don't exactly work. Over the past few months, I've been dead set on rebuilding this truck. However, now that it's back in one piece, it's time to focus on some other problems, such as the rotting brake lines, some 30-year-old components, and whatever is rolling around in the rear drum. Basically, the brakes are not in good condition. But today, that's going to change. We're going to tear through the braking system and fix every problem this truck has till it stops on a dime. What's the worst that can happen? Now, there's plenty of problems to pick from, but there's one that stands out above the rest. When I started this project about 8 months ago, I managed to snap one of the lines off of the master cylinder. I guess it was not coming out. So that seems like a fitting place to start. Following one of those lines down below takes us to the RABS unit, which is in charge of the rear anti-lock braking system. With this truck spending most of its life plowing snow, in Connecticut of all places, some of the brake fittings have to be reshaped. Should have just bought a rust-free truck, man. What am I doing? Oh, I got you, sucker. There was not much of a shape left onto that. Yep, that checks out. Most factory brake lines are made from steel, but there are better options out there, such as stainless steel
and NiCopp.
NiCopp has been my go-to. It's not as durable or flashy as stainless, but it's the easiest to work with. It's soft enough that the old steel line can be used as a bender. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. Let's add some flares. Choosing the right flare is crucial for safety. There's double flares and bubble flares, and they are absolutely 100% non-interchangeable. Based on the old lines, we'll be using double flares. For an extra layer of safety, we'll also check the inverted side as well. But everything looks good here, except for the rust. To make the flares, we'll be using this kit I got off of Amazon. It's not as mobile as the handheld ones, but it delivers a nice flare. Starting off, we'll select the 3/16 die. Now these dies are double-sided for each type of flare. So we'll place the double flare side towards the turret and lightly tighten the clamp. The turret then gets swapped to position 0 and the handle gets pulled. Now that everything is lined up, the top handle can fully get cinched down. To get the best flare possible, we'll apply some brake fluid to both of the 3/16 dies. First up is the green die. Repeat that one more time with the orange die. And that is how I make my brake lines. Based on the condition of the other front lines, I'd say it's time to change them out. That's quite the improvement if I do say so myself. Now, the rear lines weren't in bad shape by any means, but by switching the hard lines from steel to NiCopp, we're preventing future problems. So that's all the brake lines taken care of. There's a slight issue though. Since all of them got replaced, there's no brake fluid in the system. And while I'm delivering the bad news, there's also no master cylinder to fill it up from, since the original one is still stuck to the old booster. So I went out and ordered a new master cylinder and booster. But before we install those, let's check the bleeders to see if they even open. I had low hopes knowing the history of this truck, but to my surprise, it worked out fine. And honestly, the bleeders look like they're in great condition. Well, not all of them. The rear ones do look like they've been sitting at the bottom of the ocean. But with a little bit of luck and a lot of PB Blaster, it came out. Now, there's no way I'll be reusing this one, so I replaced it with a brand new bleeder. I'm pretty I've never actually dealt with drum brakes, but I guess now is as good of a time to learn as ever. Starting off, let's remove the red spring across the top. Then I'll remove the shoe adjuster and bottom spring completely out of frame.
Ah, shit. I just took that out.
After that, the one side spring was removed. Then the emergency brake assembly was unbolted, which gave us access to the last spring. That was a lot of work for one bleeder. So that's drum brakes in a nutshell. Removal is normally the easy part though. I mentioned in the intro of this video that something was rolling around in the drum, and that something was the auto adjuster. It seems to have parted ways with the rest of the assembly, so we'll just have to manually adjust the brakes later on. Now let's deal with the broken bleeder. You might be asking, why not just buy the $10 replacement? Well, why would I do that when I have this? Welding a nut on top of the bleeder seems like the easiest way to get it out. Most of my welding experience has been on sheet metal, so this should be interesting. I had high hopes for this. I'm gonna turn the welder off. I'm not giving up though. I have some easy outs and a few other tricks up my sleeve. So this is our new $10 replacement. To avoid the bleeder from getting stuck again, I'm going to add a small amount of brake grease to the threads. That should keep the rust away. We'll even go the extra mile and throw a dust cap on for good measure. As nice as this unit is, we'll still have to transfer some parts over from the old wheel cylinder. First is the inverted flare fitting. To keep this leak free, some high temp thread sealer was applied. Then the two plungers were put in place. They're very pitted, but they should still operate as needed. So that's our new wheel cylinder. Before we start reassembly, I want to point out some problems. Previously, I mentioned that the auto adjuster had broken off. And if I'm being completely honest with myself, both of these drums need to be rebuilt. But the reason that that's not happening today is simply due to time and money. With that being said, I am planning on making a complete guide on how to rebuild the rear drums as soon as I get the chance. Till that day comes, this will work just fine. Let's start reassembling the drum. That wasn't so bad. In fact, it was so much fun, I did it twice. The legs on the wheel cylinder have to be captured by the shoes. At least that's how it was originally. I'm not sure if it really matters, but I definitely don't want to find out the hard way. With all 4 bleeders working, let's fill up the master cylinder. It's always best practice to bench bleed the cylinder before installation. The thought behind it is to remove any trapped air inside. Fluid is sucked down into the cylinder, which then pushes fluid and any possible air out to these lines. Skipping this part may lead to a spongy pedal, which I'd like to avoid. The only downside to this is the mess of extremely corrosive fluid. For those of you with a keen eye, you may have noticed that the hard lines look way different. That's a result of the RABS unit being an absolute nightmare to deal with, so I may have relocated it. The new design incorporates some coils that will protect the line from any movement between the frame and cab. With the new fluid added, all that's left to do is bleed the brakes. It's never that easy. Alright, now it's time to bleed the brakes. For this, we'll use an old Gatorade bottle and some line. That way I can do this solo. Starting at the farthest point from the master cylinder takes us to the rear passenger side. This was repeated on the driver's side drum as well. Now onto the front. Why are you taking the wheel off? Just use the bleeder. Alright, I would have mentioned this before, but going 2 for 4 on bleeders is quite embarrassing. Especially when you consider how good this one looked. Luckily, there's a way around this. For now, I'm just gonna bleed it from the banjo bolt and call it good. That just leaves the driver's side. The pedal is feeling pretty good. Now, we won't know how good the pedal actually is until we introduce some vacuum into the booster. So that means it's finally time to start this thing up. Alright, here goes nothing. God, I really miss that sound. However, I also miss having a firm brake pedal. That is not good. I checked for leaks at all the fittings, but everything's dry. When I push the pedal a few times, it does get a bit harder. That's a symptom of either the booster failing, which I highly doubt because it's new, or we have a vacuum leak somewhere. Smoke machines are normally super effective at finding leaks. However, I don't know if that's going to help us today. The vacuum pump has a diaphragm inside, and I don't want to risk tearing it by adding pressure. So it looks like we'll just be doing a visual inspection instead. Thankfully, there's only a couple of lines. That will definitely cause a problem. I think this line controls the blend door for the AC. Apparently, this is pretty common. After 30 years of dealing with the engine heat, it becomes super brittle. So, for the time being, we'll splice in some vacuum line. This will work just fine, but in the future, I'll probably run a completely new line that's the same size as the original. Okay, let's try this again. The pedal is still super spongy, but consistent, unlike before. At least the blend door should be working. That means the vacuum leak was a problem, but not the problem. There's got to be something else. I've yet to adjust the drum, so maybe the shoes aren't making contact. Manually adjusting them is pretty simple. With this being a full floating axle, both of the wheels have to be in the air to check this. Basically, we're trying to feel for a certain amount of drag in the drum. So you can hear that there's some drag, but is it enough? Well, I really don't know. That's the problem. But at least I know the shoes are making contact. This is stupid, but I even went back and confirmed the proper clearance between the booster rod and master cylinder, and freed the old cylinder to rule out the new one as being faulty. I'm running out of ideas here. Underneath the truck is bone dry. Maybe not. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. Luckily, replacing the caliper is just 4 bolts. I probably should have painted that. Anyway, while bleeding the brakes, I found that the old wheel cylinder had some air pockets, and I think it's coming from the threads of the bleeder. However, since I don't know the last time it was serviced, let's just check it out. That is not good. Inside the boot is supposed to be dry with little to no moisture. This is more than a bad wheel cylinder. It shows that there was a lack of maintenance in the past. That is a mixture of water, brake fluid, and rust. At least wheel cylinders are cheap. You would think after assembling the other side, this would have been much easier. Fuck. How the fuck did I do this the first time? That was so much fun. The auto adjuster in this drum is alive and well, meaning all I have to do is get the shoes in the ballpark and let the adjuster do the rest. That's actually decent. It's a little spongy in the beginning. However, once the adjuster spreads the shoes out properly, the pedal should get better. I'm going to call this good. Now that we have brakes, I'm tempted to go for a test drive, but there's still some final touches that need to happen. I'm going to take care of that next episode though, so I hope I see you guys there.